Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. We had one of the funniest exchanges between a parent and a child a while back in our home. It was with my wife and my son, Frankie. We give him particular tasks that he can do to make money in the house. Not chores, but other tasks, and one of those is scooping the poop in the backyard. We have a couple of dogs, but the deal that we have with him is every day he does it, he makes $1. So if he does it 7 days out of the week, he makes $7, and it's easier for him to do. It takes less time because there's only 4 piles of poop or whatever there is in the backyard. It's quick, easy money for him. But the deal is $1 a day. So if he skips a week and he has 7 times the work to do, he still only gets $1 on the day that he does it. Well, he went a couple of weeks one time, and he had quite the load, no pun intended, to pick up in the back. And 3 bags later, he is done. He is sweaty. And when he sees my wife only add a single dollar on the board where we keep track of what we owe him, he got really frustrated. And he looked at my wife and he said, "Look, my wife works at home. He said, look, you sit at home on a computer having meetings all day long, and you make thousands of dollars. I just picked up like 50 turds and I only get $1? 50 turds? Really?" I wish I had captured it and could show you, because it was one of the funniest things to see my son so passionate about the work he did picking up dog turds and only making $1. But we're trying to teach our kids about money, and this is something that as parents we're all trying to do. And so this is the topic that we're dealing with today. We're talking about money, but I'm not going to do this one by myself. I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of 11 Financial. He's an Investopedia Top 100 advisor. He's a speaker. He's an author. In fact, he co-authored the book, The 5 Family Money Conversations, with his wife, Megan. I'm joined today by Taylor Kovar, and he's going to help us understand how we can talk to our kids about money and how we can teach our kids about money in a way that best suits them. I want to break in real quick and let you know how much I appreciate you listening to the podcast. My prayer is that I can be a help and a blessing to you on your fatherhood journey. So if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. And if at any point you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email at fatheringourfuture@gmail.com. And if you want other good content, you can go to the website, check out the blog, and other free resources. Thank you again for listening. Be blessed. Do you remember when you became a dad and all of a sudden those New Balances just hit differently? There's something about fatherhood that impacts your wardrobe, and I'm happy to share that I can help you with that now. Fathering Our Future now has merch. We have sweatshirts and hats and other pieces of clothing that you will enjoy sporting as a father. Just go to fatheringourfuture.com, select merch, or click the link in the description of this episode and get you something that you will enjoy and be proud to wear as a dad. Dad, I want you to know I care about you and I am on your side. So I have a free gift for you. I've put together a 7-day devotional, extracted from my devotional, Following Our Father, to help you realign your identity as a dad, to be the dad that God has called you to be and that your children need you to be. Simply click the link in the description below and get your free 7-day devotional. Well, Taylor, thank you so much for being with me on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, likewise.
I think that you're tackling something that, as parents, needs to be super important to us, and it's not always as important to us. At least we don't live it out the way that I think we should. I think we think about money all the time. I think we live in a culture that we're consumed about money and fame and success, but passing that on to our kids the way that we should, I don't know that we always do a good job of that. So I think you're going to be a tremendous help in this topic today. But before we do that, let's start with some of the good stuff about you. Tell us a little bit about your life, what you're doing, what your family looks like, how long you've been married, the good stuff.
Yeah. So grew up a kid of blue collar workers, right, in a tiny town in Texas, East Texas, where there's more cows than people. So grew up on a mile long dirt road where if it rained, we had to walk, because the cars couldn't get through. And so just really grew up. It was a great family. I love my parents are great people, salt of the earth people, give the shirt off their back, but never really had any money per se, right? I lived on overtime. And so that was my idea growing up, was like, hey, you live on overtime and you work hard and you take care of others, and, like the good old Bible Belt stuff. And so that's what I did when I became an adult, right? I jumped into debt, and I worked overtime, and I worked at the mill, and then I realized I was wanting to get married, and the girl I was dating, who's now my wife, I was like, hey, you think we're gonna get married, but you're bumming money from me for rent. Like, what's the deal, right? You can't bum money from me once we're married, right? It doesn't work that
Right.
way. Like, your money is my money, and vice versa. And I was like, yeah, I should probably figure this out. So I started reading a lot of books, talking to people, then ended up working my way through college, getting a finance degree, and I've been in and out of various businesses since then. But I primarily own an investment firm here based in Lufkin, Texas. I work with clients kind of all over the country doing financial planning, and I do a lot of speaking on marriage and money, and written a few books, and we've gotten to a few other random things. We own a coffee shop and a frozen yogurt business, and a few other just random things. I haven't officially been diagnosed with ADHD, but I assume I have it, and I get bored pretty easily. But no, I love talking about money. I love talking about marriage and money, the next generation. We're trying to raise our kids with a money mindset that works for them, and it's been a really fun life so far, right? It has its ups and downs and its curves, but we've been very blessed. So.
Well, that's awesome. I think that's great. You actually hit at a couple of things that I was curious about with your upbringing, because of where you are right now. I wanted to see if money was taught well in your home, but I think you kind of addressed that, and I think that's interesting. I also thought it was really interesting. I was going to ask what got you into finance, and the conversation with your soon to be wife, now wife, that'll do it. So it's like, if you want to keep me around, you got to figure this out. So I think that's very interesting. Now, I do want to ask you this though, based on your story and where you are today. What was it, or when was it, that you decided to take your knowledge of finance and entrepreneurship and then talk to parents and teach parents on how they could do that with their children?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. As I got into this, and then we had kids, so I have a 13-year-old son, a 10-year-old daughter, and almost 7-year-old daughter. So as I became a dad myself, I realized, hey, I want my kids to have a better life than I had, right? And we all say that, right? Everybody says it, but in reality, like, I wanted to put a dollar and cents to it, or like define what that really meant. And so teaching them financial stewardship was really important to me, right? And I didn't want to leave it up to somebody else if I could help it. But what really kind of started this was probably about, 10 years ago or so. I'm in a financial planning meeting with some clients, and there's a husband and wife that were there. And before I know it, they're both kind of crying. There's a little bit of shouting. There's a little bit of like movie roller coaster where they're all in love and crying and like, I trust you, you trust me, but you spent this. And I found myself almost playing therapist, right? In this room. And I'm not trained to be a therapist at all. And so I left that meeting and I was like, wow, there's got to be something here, right, that helps couples communicate about money, and then help them communicate to their kids about money, because we all think we know what's best, right? Like, we all think we know what's best with money. So whether you're a saver or a spender, you think you're doing it right, no one else is, right? And so I started doing this research, like psychology of money and behavioral finance and stuff. And I ran across this couple up in Colorado who had doing all this research and had identified these 5 money personalities that everybody has. They had interviewed hundreds of thousands of people, had worked with statisticians from Stanford, and identified these money personalities. And so that is what really kind of led me on the journey to like, hey, there's more to this than just telling my kid, like, hey, you need to give 10% to tithes, and you need to put some money back. Like, there's probably more in the background, and that's working behind the scenes. And how can I do this effectively? Right. And then once I'm going to say I figured it out, right, on my end, once I figured it out and studied it enough, it was like, hey, I've got to tell other people, right? Like, there has to be a way to hopefully share this with friends and family. And then that's just led to, books and podcasts and everything else. But the journey really started like 10 years ago of diving into being intentional.
Yeah. I think that's really cool, though. It's neat. I mean, so far in your story, the way that things have tracked is that there have been relationships along the way that have kind of inspired you to take a step further, to kind of remedy things, to make things better. And it's all kind of went back to people, which I think is really important. That the motive and the intent there, I think, is really good and really genuine. When it comes to the conversation that we have with our kids about money, and I say conversations, I mean conversations. I think this ought to be an ongoing talk. I like how in the book, the 5 Family Money Conversations, that it's likened to talking to your kids about sex. This is one of those things that if you get the talk, it is a singular talk, and it is like, hey, I'll use son as an example. Hey, son, you've got this. She's got that. They come together. You have a baby. That's all you need to know. And that's typically how that conversation goes. And the money conversation typically kind of follows a similar format. Like you need to go to college. You need to find a job. You need to make a lot of money, and you don't need to spend anything. And that's kind of how the conversation goes. So why is it, in your opinion, why is it so important for us to talk to our kids about money kind of in a more general sense and in an ongoing sense?
Yeah, I think it's the same reason we need to talk to kids about sex, right?
Sure.
I think one of the hesitations that a lot of people have when they talk about sex or about money is they don't know, right? You're a dad, so you've had sex, right? And you've had a job, so you have money, but you don't know a lot of stuff, right? So it's hard to get into the nitty gritty. And I think with money, we found that a lot with parents is that they don't know, other than, like you said, hey, save. Don't waste stupid money, and save some more, right? And that was it. That's how I was raised, right? My money lessons were give all that you can, and you can only spend it once. That was drilled into my head. Once that dollar's out of your hand, you can never spend it again. And then my parents meant well, and it is good advice. It's not, I don't say best advice, right? It's not ideal advice.
Sure.
I think with us, we made it intentional of when our kids were little, and we continue to this day, of trying to talk about money just openly. Right now, we don't pull out our budget and tell the kids, "Hey, we have this much in savings, and this is what we have." But even when we're in the grocery store, we're like, "Hey, we need to buy cereal. Why is Captain Crunch, $4.37, and Captain O's $2.49, right? And why would we buy one versus the other? And we only have $12 to spend, or $20. So how are we going to piece this together?" And so it just kind of became a part of life. That's right. Cool. A part of life. And kids pick up on that. So, but I think a lot of times we don't talk about it just because we don't know.
No, right? I think you're right. We look back on our lives, just like you mentioned at the very beginning. We don't want our kids to end up like ourselves. We want them to end up better. So since we've not experienced better, we don't really know what to pass on to them. Now, you made me think of something. You talked about the advice that your parents gave you and how it's good advice, but maybe not the best advice. This makes me wonder, since everything changes over time, the financial world that we live in today, I would want to say, which I'm not an expert, and I'm going to throw this to you because I think you're much better off to answer this than I am. I would say that it's different than the world that our parents and grandparents grew up. So maybe that the advice that they have is not necessarily as applicable to us. Some of the golden rules might still apply. But I want to say, it's important for us as parents, as fathers, to at least read up, kind of take some of the initiative that you took in your personal journey, just learn more about finance and how money is at least working today. Has it changed over the course of time, or has it just, stayed true and blue?
Yeah. I think the golden principles of spend less than you make, right?
Sure.
But money aside for savings and money aside for investing all hold true, right? They've held true since Bible days, right? And so one of the books I recommend people read is The Richest Man in Babylon, and it has amazing stories, and it's all based kind of around these simple principles, right? That if we get the simple down, the rest takes care of itself. Okay. I think the money conversation has changed for a lot of people since our parents' time, mainly because of the internet and the opportunities that it's provided. My parents and their generation 4, was you get a job and you're in that job for 50 years. You don't leave, right? That 50-year watch or 30-year pin or whatever, right? That is the standard. And, even before them, there was pensions tied to it and things. Whereas now, I think I had like 10 jobs before I was 18. I was moving jobs all the time. And even now I've started businesses or bought businesses because there's opportunity, right? And even
Right.
the internet has provided a ton of opportunities. And so it's just that I think the golden principles stay the same. I think how we make money or how we approach money or how we think, oh, I can make no more money unless it's overtime is not, right? It's much easier to start a side hustle today
Gotcha.
than it was 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. But
Okay.
I think golden principles are still there, right? And there's not many, but I think if you spend less than you make, that's a good
Sure.
start.
Yeah,
So,
for
yeah.
sure. Sure. But like you kind of mentioned, there are some nuances to our generation and our parents' generation to where there's more unique opportunities that they didn't have that we could capitalize on today.
Yeah.
Um, let me jump to the book and let me ask you this, because prior to going through the book, I had never heard of money personalities before.
Yeah.
So, why is understanding the money personality of ourselves and of our children necessary and important?
Yeah, so I hadn't heard of them prior to studying, right? And then, so what had happened? I met with that couple, right? And I went on this journey of searching, trying to find this stuff. I ended up meeting this couple from Colorado who'd been doing this. Built a relationship with them, started utilizing their money personalities in my financial practice, and then a few years later, they were like, "Hey, listen, we're ready to transition to a different part of life. Can you kind of uh, take the reins of it, right, and continue spreading this knowledge?" And that's how we got involved, or I got involved with the money personalities and money couple brand and things. But what resonated is I took this little free assessment, right, and just a handful of questions, and the results read me my mail. Like it was like, hey, I'm a spender risk taker, and I was like, I've never heard of putting these two together, what this is.
Yeah.
But it really outlined some of the things that I feel in my mind that I couldn't verbalize to my
Okay.
spouse, right? And I couldn't verbalize to others. They just made it in a way that really defined who I was, right? My wife took it, some of my employees took this assessment and were like, hey, that's actually how I think about money, right? This is actually how I think about it. And then that led into looking at it for kids, right? Because we want to connect with kids. And most of us have heard about the 5 love languages, right? I'm a
Yeah.
huge advocate of 5 love languages. So money personalities are very similar in nature to that. We all have a money personality. We're all born with a money personality. Unlike love languages, our money personality doesn't really change, right? Unless something super drastic happens, but in theory, it doesn't ever change. And so it just helps us communicate better, right? If I know my kid's love language is physical touch, but yet I never go and hug them and I'm not wrapping my arms around them and all I do is tell them how great they are, they're not going to feel it. Their love tank's going to stay empty, right? On the same hand, if I am trying to teach my kid about money or motivate them with an allowance or, hey, if you every A you get $10, but yet they don't think about money that way,
Sure.
it's for naught, right? And so understanding your spouse and your kids' money personality to me it's been a game changer for us. And I put both of those side by side, and just helping us train our kids the right way, right?
Sure.
If you have kids, they're all different, right?
Exactly.
I've got 3. They're 3 completely different personalities. They think differently. They talk differently. Their logic processors are different. And so knowing the money personalities of each of them really helps me to communicate better with them on how to either save or spend money and how to think about money in the long term and how to think about investments or think about a career. And so for me, it's just another tool in the quote unquote dad toolbox. Right. And that's what it is to me. Yeah.
I think that's a neat approach of understanding their personality when it comes to money, and then also understanding what you combined with that from Chapman, the love languages, and then being able to work with them and deal with them, speak to them in a way that's going to actually resonate with them. I think this is really important for us to do as dads is you got to understand your kid because
Yeah.
like you mentioned, there's not a one size fits all approach to anything when it comes to what we're doing primarily as Christian dads, and that's making disciples. And under this umbrella of discipleship, there's sex and there's money and there's relationships and everything else. And it's going to be different child to child. Now, a lot of this stems in the relationship of knowing your child. I think it's very easy for us when it comes to money to see how it can impact our marriage, because marriages almost either thrive or fall on money sometimes.
Yeah.
But maybe can you connect the dots, because it seems like you're pairing the two of the parent-child relationship having some sort of hinge with money. Can you maybe make that a little more obvious for us, since I have never really thought that way, that I can impact the relationship of my child because of my take on money, how I talk or don't talk about money. Could you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the first questions I ask every new client of my investment firm is why are you working? Right? Why are you doing what you're doing? And the generic answer is I want to provide a better life for my kids.
Okay.
And I mentioned this earlier, right? That's a generic answer. And I always tell them, what does that really mean? Right? What's it mean? Because I know people who have hundreds of millions of dollars who have no relationship with their kids, but their kids, by all standards, are living in this amazing life, right?
Sure.
They're traveling the globe and doing these other things. But are they having a better life than the kid whose dad is at every T-ball game or every recital or every, something else? And so for me, knowing how my kid thinks about money and how I think about money, one, helps me communicate with them better, because there's going to be things that we can't always afford, right? Why can't we go to Disney World because somebody else's family went to Disney World, or
Yeah.
this or that, or even talking about chores and allowances. But if I can understand and know my child, and I know what motivates them, I know how they think, I know their processes, it's a lot easier for me to communicate. Right. So one of the best pieces of advice I give dads all the time is do what they want to do, not what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. I want to go golfing. Hey, kid, come along with me and we're having bonding time. The
Right.
kid doesn't want to golf, right? They want to build Legos and they want you to build Legos with them. Right.
Yep.
And so when I think about money, if all I'm teaching them is, hey, I'm a spender risk taker, and listen, you need to be buying businesses and you need to go find a rent house at 14 and you need to start a YouTube channel at 11. Right. But their mindset is saving and security. It's like I'm pulling them to go golfing,
Yeah.
even though I'm teaching them. It's not that connection that really works for that child, right? And so that's kind of where it makes sense to me. Is like, hey, I have a daughter who's a saver, security seeker. I want to teach her. Okay, listen, this is how we're going to look about money. This is why when we go to the grocery store, we buy the Crunchy O's instead of Captain Crunch, because they taste the same or whatever, right? And it's
Right.
just cheaper, and you get more of those dollars in your pocket, and you can do that money for something else. Or this is why we buy the $10 hammer instead of the $1 hammer,
Right.
right? Because that hammer you're going to have for the rest of your life. And so uh, to me, it's all about that relatability, right? How am I relating to my child in a way that connects with them? So
I think that's good. And I think that's smart, focusing on that relationship, and specifically that lasting relationship. And you brought up something, the last couple of points here, that I think is really interesting. One, in knowing the money personality of your child, you said unless something huge happens, that's likely never to change throughout the course of their life, which is, I think that's interesting. But also that our goal is not necessarily to conform their personality when it comes to money to our personality when it comes to money. Um, I feel like that would be a natural proclivity of parents to want to do that. Like, in my life, I have learned this. Here's my experience. Here's the T-shirts that I've gained over the years. Put one of them on and follow in my steps. And that's not really the right way forward. I think I think that's a good take for us to hear as fathers, to know that we can't necessarily make this all about us, but like you said, we have to do what they want. We have to be in tune of their needs and what means something to them, and then we have to speak to that, and we have to help them where they are. Because you might be the big great entrepreneur, but your kid has zero desire to do that. They might want to just grow up and be strictly stay-at-home mom. They might want to grow up and literally just work for somebody else, because that's where they find joy and happiness, not owning the business and not having to deal with all the employees and all the relationships and the chaos that comes with that.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's smart, because I think the classic example of this is, you have a son, and if you were athletic at all in your youth, you think, man, I was almost professional, even though you were nowhere close, and you want them to be professional.
yeah,
And so you put all your time and energy and focus on them becoming this great athlete that you never were. And they couldn't care less. It's just like, they're done with it. Rather than fighting that fight, actually doing something that's of value and beneficial, learning about your kid, understanding where they're at, and then helping them forward with their personality. I think that's smart. So maybe we've hit this, maybe we haven't quite hit this yet, or maybe we could refine this into a better answer. What then is the goal of having these money conversations with our kid?
Yeah. I think there's a few different answers to it.
Okay.
For me, I want to have that connection with my kid, right? I don't want them to turn 18 or 20 and leave the house or whatever that is, or 12, right? And begin butting heads all the time. Like, I want my kids to know I'm on their team, right? That I'm on their team and I support them. You use the example of sports, right? I grew up playing baseball, live, breathe, eat, sleep all the time. My son never wanted anything to do with it, right? Like, not athletic. I mean, like, kids in good shape, but not his thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I want him to know, hey, I want to connect with you, and I want what's best for you. So a big part of that answer is I want to be able to connect with them. I want to be able to communicate with them in a way they want to be communicated with. And then two, if I really want what's best for them, I've got to talk about what's them. I've got to know them, right? And I think that's part of us as dads. So often we think, oh, well, I'm providing, I'm working, I'm giving these opportunities, but do I know them, right? Am I building a relationship with my child that's going to last forever, right? It's going to stand the test of time. And so I think knowing the money personalities, one, it's just another tool in all of those things. And we go back and we talk about, like, how can we identify money personalities in kids? And then we have a little questionnaire for different age ranges, which is great. This stem from, like, I have 3 kids, right? We go trick-or-treating on Halloween. I have one of them, they come back, half of their bowl is wrappers, right? They've ate half their candy on the way. We get home, I got another kid who's, like, planning theirs out, right? They've mapped out, they're eating this candy today, this one tomorrow, this one's going to school on Friday because that's the day they get. Like, think about it, mapped out for 2 months, right? Yeah, and then I have another kid who's trying to trade candy, right? They're like, oh, I've got, these 3 I love and I hate those, so I'm trading out. Well, that's their money, right? Like, that is their assets. And so it's really easy to kind of see money personalities in these different examples. And so once you're able to really kind of pick those out. And again, communicate and connect with them in a way that resonates with the kid. And to me, that's what it's about, man. We're dads, right? If you're going to be a good dad, it's not just about providing money for them or food on the table. So
that's right. Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think we've done a good job so far covering more of a theoretical approach to this conversation with the money. Like, this is why we do all of this. It's about connection with our kids. It's about relationship. It's about helping them out in the long run. It's not necessarily trying to determine what success is going to be for them, but understanding what they deem as success and then helping them pursue that. I think that's such a good, selfless approach that we need to adopt as fathers. I want to take a little bit of a twist here, since we focused more on the back-end theory of this conversation about money with our kids, and maybe deal with some more practical things. So some of the things I've jotted down since we were talking that just kind of came to me, and then some of them I had prior to this. But let me ask you a few things on the practical side. Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap: Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. And this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is, if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. Everyone has an opinion on fatherhood, but there's only one place that we should actually look, and that's to God, our Father. That's why I wrote Following Our Father, a devotional for dads. In this, I cover 30 qualities and attributes of our Father in heaven that help us better understand our identity as dads. Each devotional is followed up with a daily step so that we can take the principles of our Father and immediately apply them to our own lives. This is a tool and a resource in your hands that will bless you. Click the link in the description and get yourself a copy of Following Our Father today. I had a buddy of mine who his dad, very wealthy, but his dad handled his finances for him until he was 25, and then maybe even post-marriage, still a little bit. When do you think we should be hands-off with our kids' money?
Usually the question is formed is like, when should we start having those conversations? I don't know if there's a good answer for being hands off.
Okay.
Now I say that every kid is different. Every situation is different, right?
Sure.
I think by the time a kid is late teens, just like we're slowly giving them more freedom as they get older. I think that's how we should be doing it with money, right?
Okay.
Where at some point, your kid's not saying, "Hey, can I stay up till 10 and watch this movie?" They just know you're making the decision. You have to be up for school at 8, right? So
Right.
if you stay up late, you know the consequences, right? Or whatever. I think that's that same approach with money, where we can be that sounding board and we kind of give more of that freedom and flexibility. But I think being married is too much, right? I think that's too long. But I look at it a lot like, hey, I put around that 18, right, age range where we kind of, most people will say, hey, at 18, kids kind of making their own decisions. They're kind of doing their own thing. Now I do believe, hey, if your kid is at home at 18, 19, you're the one providing, they're not working, you're supplying money and things, you do have a little more control. Right. Sure. And you have a little more like, hey, let's talk about this and why we're doing this. And that's why I think it's so different for everybody.
Okay.
But yeah, I like the kind of stair-stepped approach that we use for them in life in general. Right.
No, I think that's smart.
Yeah. But I with that approach, I've seen people say, well, at 18, they're gone. Right. Like you made your bed, you lay in it. Right. That's not the relationship I want my kid, right? I tell our kids all the time, like, you can talk to me about anything, anytime. You're ever in danger, you're ever in a situation, you can always call me. You can always call mom and dad, right? And I think if you've built that relationship where they feel comfortable coming to you at 23, 33, right? And saying, hey, listen, here's the situation I got myself into. How can I get out of it, right? Or I'm facing this, or I want to buy this or that. To me, it's about having that relationship in place to begin with.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely don't think I should be controlling my kids' finances whenever they're 20 something.
Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I just, I don't call that out to, knock at my buddy, but, or to even knock at his dad. But I did think that was really interesting. I thought, man, that's nuts. I mean, I remember working with him and him having to call his dad, like, hey, can I spend $10 at lunch today? And I'm thinking, dude, you're 21 years old. This is crazy.
No, and I think you'll like, I think anytime if you have kids, right, and you're raising kids, it's always easier, right? It's easy for you to do the laundry and for you to do the dishes and for you to clean up and for you to cook, because it sucks teaching a kid this is how you wash the clothes and this is how you make dinner, right? Because they're going to mess up and you mess up more dishes, or they put a red shirt in with the whites, or what, like, there's always something. But we do those things because we want to raise healthy, like, great adults, right? Productive members of society. It's the same thing with money.
Yeah. No, I think
so.
Yeah. We have to let them fail, and I think the stair-step approach that you talked about definitely applies to that. They're going to spend too much money and not be able to pay a cell phone bill or whatever it is. However that plays out, you have to let them make that mistake and then learn from that.
I want them to be able to fail under my roof.
Correct.
Right. My 13-year-old spent more money on a Lego set than he couldn't afford something else that he wanted. And it was like, bro, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is why we talked about, and as a parent, I want to step in and say, hey man, I'll just buy you this other thing. But I need him to learn the lesson that, hey, you've got to budget this, right? You only have X dollars. So
Right.
I'd much rather make that failure while I'm still there and guiding them, rather at 23 when they're dropping $80,000 on a vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's super smart. All right. Let me ask you this. Should we be giving our kids an allowance for no reason? It's just, I remember growing up and thinking, this is what kids got. You get $10, $20 a week or whatever it was. You
yeah.
didn't have to do anything in the house. You just got an allowance. Good idea, bad idea.
Personally, I don't like it.
Okay.
So personally, I don't like it. I know a lot of people who do it, right? And I've seen the reports and stats on either side, and I think you could tell a story either way. I think kids should know there's certain things you do in the home because you're part of our family.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not paying you for doing the dishes. I'm not paying you for taking out the trash. I'm not paying you for helping clean up, because that is just part of life. Right.
Yeah.
That is just part of it. And so we don't do allowances for that reason.
Okay.
Right. Now, if you go above and beyond, you're stepping in and you're doing maybe one of the other kids' chores, or you're taking something off my plate, or you're doing something else. Yes. So we do that a lot, right? Hey, you can earn money, but there are certain things you just do as part of life. And I relate that a lot to having a job, right? I employ and have employed a lot of people, and like, well, I've been here 6 months. I deserve a raise. And it's like, but like, I'm paying you to do this job. Like,
Right.
you've done nothing else. Why should I pay you more just because you've been here 6 months, right? Like,
Yeah.
And that's how I think with kids at home. It's like, hey, like, dad doesn't get paid for doing the laundry. This is just part of what we do, right? This is part of us living here. Now, if you're out doing something else additional, yeah, you should be compensated. You should get a bonus,
Sure.
For that. Yeah.
Okay. No, I think that's good. The language that my wife uses with the kids at the house is, you're contributors to this family. So, you're part of the family. This is what we do. We don't award you because you helped.
Yeah.
To your home too. It's kind of what we tell the kids. Okay. So allowance, likely a bad idea, just for no reason at all. And I think you hit at the next question I was going to ask. Paying for chores, bad idea, because we want them to just be contributors. Know that they're actually a part of the family and a part of the home unit. So paying for chores, unless there's something like out of the norm. So I shared a story at the very beginning of this podcast, introing in, that you haven't got to hear yet. But with my 8-year-old, we give him a couple of tasks that he can do to make money. And one of those is scooping the poop in the backyard, because we have a couple of dogs. We tell him that he can have $1 every day that he does it. Now, the funny thing that happened a while back is he went a couple of weeks without doing it. And he then had a conversation with my wife where he just, he doesn't understand money, doesn't understand work. And he got very upset. He said, there was a lot in the backyard, and he just let it pile up. And we kind of kept pushing him, like, hey, buddy, you should probably do that. And he didn't. And finally he did. And, 3 bags later, he comes inside, and we keep a big board in the kitchen with a bunch of different things. And on there is, we track how much we owe him month after month. And when he saw only $1 added after he did all the work that he did, he got really upset with my wife. And he said, Mom, this is ridiculous. He said, you sit at home, because she works from home. You sit at home and you're on a computer having meetings, talking to people all day, and you make thousands of dollars. I picked up at least 50 turds, and I get $1. Really? But it was a good little lesson, right?
It is, yeah.
And so that's kind of the approach that we take. So anyway, all fun aside. So chores, not a good idea to pay for. Let them know that they're part of the family. Yeah. Allowance for no reason, not a good idea.
Now, a little disclaimer I will throw out here, right?
Because
every family is different, and I have seen this, right? No one's, and I'm talking as the expert. Listen, we're first time parents as well, right? We didn't get a redo, and so we're learning as we go and using other people's experiences. I have seen parents take that to the extreme, right? Where they'll list 50 things out, right? And you do all these things just because you're part of this family. It's like, man, but he's 7, right? Like some of this is maybe a little excessive. You got to give some room there where the opportunity is there for them to earn more, right? Like the picking up the dog turds, right? It is kind of expected, but at the same time, like it's additional, right? And you can make money of doing it. And so don't, you can't just throw everything on the kid, right?
Yeah.
And not give them an opportunity to earn more or to
Right.
make anything. So I just be mindful of that as parents.
No, I
Right?
think that's good. And I think sometimes when that is the case, it's almost the parents thinking that I have kids now and they're going to be my little employees around the house so that I don't have to do anything. And I think
Yep.
if that's ever the mindset, then that's definitely a big problem.
Yeah.
Um, okay, what about this one? How early should we actually be giving our kids cash, actually handing them money? At what age do you think, or is there, I know maybe an age is not the best thing, but is there like a mental mile marker that we could look to and say, okay, I think my kid's actually ready for me to hand them a dollar bill. They won't shred it up thinking if I rip it in 3 pieces, I have $3 now.
Yeah. I, I think that's when right? Is
Okay.
Are you comfortable giving your kid the key to your car? Right? Are they going to go flush it in the toilet, or are they going to put it in their nightstand, or are they going to
Yeah.
put it on the bar in the kitchen? Right? If there's any concern that you think they're going to flush it down the toilet, don't. It's too young to give them cash,
Okay.
right? And so that's usually my default. And again, every kid's different, but that's usually around 3 or 4, right? I think for most parents would feel comfortable.
Okay.
And I always, hey, just do it a couple of bucks, right? If they
Yeah.
lose $2 or they give it away at school or it falls out of their pocket at Walmart, like it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah.
But them feeling it, knowing they have it, it's a sense of accomplishment and pride, and they get to start to understand it. That's usually when I say they're not going to swallow it, they're not going to flush it down the toilet, right?
Yeah.
So if they're past that age, I think you're pretty safe.
Okay.
And again, you don't want to give, I'm not going to give my kid $100 bill, right?
Sure.
I'm not going to give 20, but a couple of ones, right? Awesome. I think
Yeah.
you're in good hands.
Yeah, maybe start out with Monopoly money before you actually
There you go.
pull out the real.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. No, I think that's good. I want to get your take on something that we do because I have this
Yeah.
opportunity to you poke holes in some of the practices that we have in our home. So, so right now my daughter is 6. My oldest daughter is 6. We give her money for particular things, or she gets money for birthdays and things like that. She doesn't really care about money, so she knows that it's important, but she'll leave it on her dresser forever to wind up on the floor, and then we'll pick it up before we vacuum, things like that. My 4-year-old doesn't care at all about money. It's no value to her. So one of the things that we do, because we have relatives who send money to the kids, we actually started taking that money, and that's what we use to start the kids' college funds. So I'm curious, good idea, bad idea, or are there other ideas maybe better or similar to that if you approve?
Love the idea.
Okay.
Right. So blanket statement. Love the idea. We do something similar for our kids. Right.
Cool.
So what we did, right, is when our kids were born, we started putting $5 a week into an investment account.
Okay.
Right, for our son. That's been 13 years. And now we've added to it with the other kids, and now it's kind of all 3 kids account. But we started adding money to that, right? As they got money for birthdays and Christmas and different things from, whoever, relatives and other stuff, we would basically take that money and put into that account. And now that account's pretty substantial, right? It's larger than way the average American's savings account, right?
Sure.
And we know that money is there for them to either use for college or start a business or any number of things, right? And so I love that idea.
Okay.
I have seen other family members or people who aren't as confident, right? Opening up an investment account or a college savings account, do that in, they'll put jars in the kids' rooms, right? For long-term savings and, short-term, and then, spend, have fun money. And that's a visual representation for kids. And I've seen people have great success with that, right? But some kids are motivated by seeing that and seeing it get full. And other kids, especially kids who have a lot of technology, like seeing, oh, this is my account, or, knowing that it's there. But no, I love the idea of putting that money aside for them for the long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you brought up one other thing, and this is my last, I think, practical question that at least comes up in conversations with parents. So you mentioned the physical jars, the physical boxes compared to the digital side of things. I know in the book, the Five Family Money Conversations, a lot of the instruction for at least younger kids is creating these boxes so that they can see, like, this is what I'm going to spend, this is what I'm going to save, this is what I'm going to give. Is there any research behind one of those being better than the other? So for dads listening, is it better off for us to, create this box or put these jars so that our kids can visually see everything, contrast it to opening up, say, a green light account so that we monitor and the kids can see it occasionally?
Yeah, I don't know if there's been research. I think the younger they are, the boxes are perfect, right?
Okay.
A 4-year-old, a 5-year-old isn't going to be able to comprehend. Even my 7-year-old can't comprehend dollars on a screen, right?
Sure.
Even though she can work an iPad like a pro,
Right.
she doesn't understand, right? Whereas a box that has, it's only this much full or this much full, uh, she can understand, because she can understand the cereal boxes are like that, right? The more cereal in there, the more she can eat. And so I think that works. And then again, as they get older, it kind of starts to shift. So, for
Okay.
example, my 13-year-old came to me, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, right? And he's like, "Hey, Dad," and he had these little baggies of money, and he'd written on one like he wants to open a checking account, he wanted to open a CD, and he wanted an investment account. And I was like, "Well, but it's like here's." Where are you learning this, right? Because your
Yeah.
dad is
Well
a
done.
certified financial planner, right? Like I do this
Well
for a
done.
living, and he's like, I've been watching these YouTube videos, and here's a list of stocks I want to buy. And I was like, do you know what a stock is, right? And so I had to talk to him about, like, as a 13-year-old, you don't need a CD, right? You don't. But he was. It made it really clear to me, hey, he's ready to grow out of the box phase and
Okay.
into something that is more tangible, more adult, right?
Okay.
And so, he's in that process now. He's 13. Well, my daughter, who's 10, did the same thing 6 months ago,
Okay.
right? And we know that girls are more mature than boys and different things. And so, there's not an exact age, but my 10-year-old wanted to start seeing money on the screen, and the money in the box, right, or the wallet or the envelope start to diminish, and more of money on the screen. And so I do think as a young child, the box is phenomenal. When ours were little, they had the box and they had the investment account, but they just didn't know the investment account existed.
Sure.
Right?
Do
They
they
still
know? Do they know now?
they know they have one, right? And they have their own investment accounts. They don't know, and they know mom and dad put money aside for them, but they've never seen the big one,
Got it.
right? So they see theirs that have a little bit of money in it, but they don't see the one that we've been setting aside for them.
Okay, so you're gonna do that Dave Ramsey. The kids are old enough. Hey, kids, sit down. Here's our family net worth. Here's the money that you have. Like, at some
Yeah,
point, that conversation is coming.
at
Just not
some
today.
point. Yeah, and what we did, I help a lot of people set up 529 accounts for their kids for
Yeah.
college and stuff, which are great. I like having that flexibility of when I want to give the kid the money and what I want to use it for. And
Yeah.
so for us, the money is in our name. Right? It's mine and my wife's name. It's in our account. We're taxed on it, but I like having that. I
Sure.
like knowing that when my kid turns 18, if God forbid they're not living the life that we want them to live or that we've raised for them, that they're not just going to be handed a lump sum of money to go do whatever they want to with, right?
Yeah.
And so we like having that ability to kind of safeguard it until we're ready to give it to them. And whether
Okay.
that's for college or whether it's for a car or to travel the world or launch a business or, hey, happy wedding, right?
Yeah.
And so we like having that. I'm big on options, having options.
Sure. Sure. No, I think that's smart. Um, okay, let me ask you this. So one of the things that I often say as a dad when I start every single episode is that I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I'm trying to be better. Now, I know you're in the same boat. Like you've alluded to this. Like, it's your first time around. You made mistakes along the way. You're still researching. Do you have it all figured out? No, there's always something else to learn. But you're on the path. So, can you share maybe a good success story? And you've already shared some, but if there's another one, throw it at us. But could you share also a story where you thought you failed initially? And I'm sure after you realized I failed, I went back and I fixed it, or tried to remedy the best you could. But could
Yeah.
you give us a success story and man, I really blew it that time story?
Yeah, I can try.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say for every dad out there who's listening or parent listening, if you're trying and you're doing things like listening to podcasts and reading books, you're doing better than 97% of other people, right? If not
Correct.
99%, because they're not
Correct.
even trying. In our careers, we have continuing education requirements. It's not required for our marriage. And it's not required to have to be a parent. And so for you doing this on your own, I commend you. I applaud you. Keep after it, right?
Yeah.
And so, one of the, I think, success stories, alluding to my kids coming to me saying, hey, I want to open up an account and here's the money I want to invest and kind of how I've thought through it. At least we know that, hey, at least we're on the right track, right?
Yeah.
We've had conversations where they're at least interested in to run this. But a few years ago, and I'll use my son, great kid, but we had been giving him more money, right? He had been earning more money. And we had went from, hey, instead of $1 for picking up the poop in the yard, we're giving you $5 because it's more poop or there's whatever, right? Like he was making more and more money. And because we don't really have it on a set schedule, I didn't realize how much money the kid had. Right. And he ended up having several $100s. I didn't really know it. He just had it in his room. And we were somewhere and we were trying to teach him this money lesson, right? Because something had broken or he was about to break something. And he was like, oh, it's fine. I'll just buy another one. I'll just pay for it. And I was like, whoa, no, that's not the lesson here, right? The lesson isn't just to do whatever you want to do because you can afford to write it off, right?
Right.
The lesson is you need to feel some pain, right? And so for us, that's when we realized, hey, we need to be a little more intentional about how much we're giving and how much they're saving and why that money is important. Because I didn't want him to be that brat, right?
Sure.
That's 16 and is making fun of his friends because they can't afford to go out to eat, but he can because he has this money or whatever.
Yeah.
And we kind of saw that writing on the wall with how he acted that day. And we both kind of looked at each other, right? I mean, my wife did. And we're like, all right, this is gonna be something we have to discuss
Yeah.
later. So that was I call them learning opportunities. That was a learning opportunity for us to be able to have that conversation. Like, hey, we're not raising a little punk, right?
Yeah.
Just because you have money and you've been blessed to have some money, doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean you don't have any responsibilities because you can break your sister's toy because you can afford to buy her another one in 2 weeks. Right.
Right.
It doesn't give you that. And so that was one where, that's a learning opportunity for us. So,
No,
yeah.
I think that's great though. And that's good for us to see. My son is in a similar spot. He's more of the saver personality for sure. And I've given him a goal. I don't have time to talk about it right now, but he's 8 and he's north of $400 right now. He keeps
It's
it all in
awesome.
his wallet, keeps it, saved away. And I've got a plan for it. And we've already talked about it, but,
Yeah.
he's going to hate to see it go, but anyway, good lessons along the way. Okay. This has been fantastic. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation about money. The more theoretical side, the emphasis on relationship, which I think is something that just intrinsically we want to disconnect from money. That money is just this object, it's this asset, get it, have it, and don't stress. But actually linking that to the relationships that we have with one another, I think is really powerful. And then just some of the practical guidance and stuff, things that either we grew up with, of getting an allowance for no reason. I was certainly guilty of that. I didn't have chores, but I still got money. Fortunately, I don't think I turned out half bad. So, but to follow in the footsteps, I don't want to try to repeat that because maybe you're not lucky the second time around. But good practical guidance and advice, and I appreciate the stories of your own personal life that really make everything more tangible for us. In a very generic sense, maybe it's related to money, and you already said something about this, and maybe it's a repeat. But in general, your best advice for dads, what's that?
Um, yeah, I think for dads, a phrase I use a lot is comparison is the thief of joy.
Okay.
Right. And so if you're a dad and you're comparing your kid versus other kids, you're comparing your work versus other dads, your relationship with your spouse versus other people you see, it's going to steal your joy. Right. So you be the best dad that you can be. right?
Yeah.
And so if that means connecting with your kid using tools like we're talking about today, and not focusing on, oh well, that dad give his kid is flying all over the world, or his kid's the best baseball player in the world, or his kid is this or that. Your kids are unique, and don't let comparison steal the joy in your home. Right? You get to set that for you and your family, and so yeah, continue being the best dad that you can be.
That's super good advice. Thank you for that. We'll wrap things up. I'll give you an opportunity before we say our goodbyes to give people some information on how they can get a hold of you, learn more about you, connect with you, get some of the resources that you've been a part of. Before we do that, though, would you wrap things up with this conversation in a word of prayer?
Yeah, definitely. No, I'd love to.
Thank you.
All right. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity to spend time talking about how to be a better dad, a better parent, a better spouse. And Lord, we just ask that you will give each of these listeners a special covering, that you will bless them, that you will nurture them, that you will guide them, direct their footsteps, increase their territory and their assets and their influence and their ability, and let them be able to connect with their families and their children in a way that they never have before, and help them to be a light to their communities and to their home. And God, we just ask for a special blessing over them and their lives. We love you and praise you. Amen.
Amen. All right. So if people want to connect with you, Taylor Kovar, maybe they want to be a client. Maybe they want some financial advice and guidance. Maybe they want some of the books that you've written, or some of the stuff that you and your wife do as the money couple. How do they do that? Where do they go?
Yeah, so really easy to find. We got 100 different websites and all these different things. Easiest one is probably themoneycouple.com, right? Themoneycouple.com will kick out to everything else. We have the 5moneypersonalities.com and 11 Financial. We have taylorkovar.com, but themoneycouple.com will kick to those. That has actually links to all of our books. We have courses. We have, if you want a program where you can actually go through with your kids over like 10 weeks, teach them about money, but it'll also teach you about money, right? So we do it like Sunday school teacher style. Okay. That's available on the Money Couple website. Links to the 5 Money Personality Quiz for you and your spouse and your kids is on there. Links to how to connect with us for financial planning and investment related things can all be found there, but and all the social media channels. So
okay, yeah. Awesome. Themoneycouple.com. Taylor, again, thank you so much for this. You've been a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, and I'm really glad you joined me for this conversation.
Hey, it was fun. I enjoyed it. Love to be back or answer any questions I can. So any listeners out there, hit me up.
Whether you have a handle on money or whether it's something that you really struggle with, I pray that you're able to take components of the conversation today and apply them to your home and to your family and help your kids. Because just like all the other things that we have the responsibility as dads for, we've got to raise our children as disciples across the spectrum. And money is one of those things that we have to talk to them about, that we have to help them become good stewards with. Don't avoid the money conversations. Welcome them. Go for them head on. And I want you to know that during this thing that we do called fatherhood, that you are not by yourself. If you need help along the way, if you struggle with a conversation, if you're dealing with something personal, if there's just questions that you have that you feel you're not getting answers for, you can always reach out to me. I might not have all the answers. I might not be the best resource, but I am an available resource to you. fatheringourfuture@gmail.com is how you can get a hold of me. Know that what you're doing is absolutely vital and essential. You are a dad. You're a difference maker, a dynasty builder. You are a dad. Be all in on this thing called fatherhood. And remember, I'm here for you if you need me. Thank you so much for being with me today. This is Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you'll join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen and consider leaving a nice review because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference, and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital, and they are essential, and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home. but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment, but by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.